So the equation of motion in case of rotation can be written as basically torque is equal to the rate of change of angular momentum, right? In the similar way that we write equation of motion for translational motion, where force is equal to rate of change of linear momentum, right? Now what we did was we considered a special case. So in case of in a special case where the rotation basically means that the rate of change of angular momentum, this dl over dt, is rotation of this vector L, right, with uniform omega. So along a particular axis and with a constant angular velocity, angular speed omega. Then in that special case, we could write this tau, which is in general equal to dl over dt, as omega cross L, right? So this was our special treatment, and then using this relation, we wrote down we basically solve for the equation of motion, right? Okay. Now, in general, we will not be driving it, but in general, if you see the treatment, then we can write down a general equation of motion as dl over dt, which now this angular momentum, rate of change angular momentum, can have the familiar rotation component, where the magnitude remains constant, simply rotates with uniform angular speed omega, and there might be a change in magnitude also, right? And that change in magnitude can come about because of the change in the angular speed, right? So what we can do is, in general, we can, or let us say in general, right? We can write down the torque as the rate of change of angular momentum, where I am writing this as magnitude. This is the magnitude rate of change of angular momentum plus whatever comes because of this kind of rotation. Right? So then this becomes a general equation of motion for rotation, which is same as this. However, now the special case is a part of this entire motion, right? Okay, and now we can do this. So we can write this down. Then this is basically our equation of motion. And most of the cases, what we have seen is L does not change in magnitude with time. Omega also is a constant. It's a uniform precision. So this term automatically goes to 0, and then my tau is simply omega cross L, right? Okay. So this is a more general way of writing the same thing. And of course, the difficulties could be because now omega is changing. So how do we couple these two things? How do we apply these two things? That's a different way. That will depend on the particular problem. What we can do is, now we can again go back to our previous treatment, where we wrote down or we discussed the motion in terms of principal axis, because otherwise the problem may not be very easy to solve, right? So in terms of principal axis, where we can define, so let us say we have a set of principal axis 1, 2, 3 for an rigid body, right? Now such that the angular momentum L can now be written as, well, I1 omega 1 E1 cap, where E1 cap is the unit vector along principal axis 1, plus I2 omega 2 E2 cap plus I3 omega 3 E3 cap, right? So E1, E2, E3 are unit vectors along the three principal axes 1, 2, 3. And I1, I2, I3 are the moments of inertia along these principal axes 1, 2, 3. And since we are dealing with the principal axis of the body, we don't have to worry about the products of inertia. So we are not worried about the off diagonal terms. And then we can write down this total angular momentum L as I1 omega 1, I2 omega 2 and I3 omega 3, where omega 1, omega 2, omega 3 are again components of the angular velocity omega along these three principal axes, right? And omega is then similarly omega 1 plus omega 2 plus omega 3, right? So if we now deal with rigid body motion in terms of three sets of in terms of the three principal axes, then we can rewrite this. We get a more well, that's a simpler expression in terms of component. We can rewrite this as tau is, well, not much change as far as I am going to write this one, right? Omega cross L. However, now in component form, I can write down tau 1 as the torque along principal axis 1. Tau 1 will be basically dl over dt 1 plus omega cross L. So it's component along that principal axis. Now we know that the L1 or the component of L along principal axis 1 is simply I1 omega 1, along 2 is simply I2 omega 2, along 3 is simply I3 omega 3. So using that, now I can write down this as I1 omega 1 dot, because I1 is a constant, so only the angular velocity can change, plus omega cross L and its one component, or in case y1, 2, 3 coincide with xyz, if I choose the system that way, then basically the x component of omega cross L, right, at that instant. So you can do this cross product using these decompositions, and what we'll get is, we get this as I3 minus I2 omega 2 omega 3, right? This is tau 1, and similarly I can write down tau 2 as I2 omega 2 dot plus I1 minus I3 omega 3 omega 1, and tau 3 is, or the torque along the third principal axis is I3 omega 3 dot plus I2 minus I1 omega 1 omega 2. Okay. So we can write down the general expression for components of torque along these three principal axes by using the general equation of motion as this, and these are termed as Euler's equation of motion. So these three are basically Euler's equation of, well, motion for rotation, motion in case of rotation, right? And the important point to note down is the torques, the component of torques are defined along the principal axis, right? They are not defined in the lap frame, they are defined in the principal axis, and that way they give us the instantaneous torque at any given time t, right? And at that instant we can always take or we can always propose that the xyz coordinates of the lap frame, right, or the initial frame match with the 1 to 3 principal axis of the system. However, at a later time, these principal axes are going to rotate or going to vary in comparison to the inertial frame or in comparison to the lap coordinate system, and then we have to write down a different components for the so at a later time t, we'll have to write down these components in a different form, right? Because then the principal axes have changed, but the instantaneous torque or the components of torque at a given instant can be obtained using these three Euler's equations, right? Okay, so let us try to see that using an example. And the example that I am going to take, example 1. So the example I am going to consider is, well, let us take rotation of rigid body with principal axis 1 to 3, right, such that I1 is not equal to I2 is not equal to I3, right? So rotation of a rigid body about 3 principal axes at a given instant, where all the 3 moment of inertia are different, right? Different from each other, right? And a simple example of this is a cuboid shaped object, right? For example, a box, right? So you can take a box, for example, this is the box, right? And it has all 3 different sides, so it will have 3 principal axes along which you will have 3 moment of inertia. However, all these 3 moment of inertia are different to each other, right? For example, one principal axis is this, so it can rotate about this vertical axis. Another one is this, so it can rotate in this way, right, like this. And the third one is then like this, so it can go about this direction, right? So there are 3 different directions, and these 3 and all these 3 have a different moment of inertia. So we can do that. Let us just represent that for the sake of completeness. So let's take a cuboid. Right. So this is my cuboid, and so let us say this is the center. This is the center of mass. So I have this. I can take omega 1 I1. So this is axis 1, right? Similarly, I can have another axis passing through the center of mass, right? Now this is axis 2, and it can have rotation about this axis omega 2 I2. There is a third one, which is this one, along the shortest this thing, and again it can have a rotation about this, and we can take the omega and I3 in this direction, right? So it has these 3 sets of principal axes, and let us say so. Let us now formulate the problem and now see what is the evolution. So the problem that we are formulating is, let's say at t equal to 0, right? Omega 1 is constant, omega 2 is omega 3 is equal to 0. So that means, to begin with, my box is rotating about this axis 1 or whatever. We are not defining which one is axis 1. However, we know that there are 3 principal axes. You can always change the notation as 1, 2, 3. However, let's say it's rotating about one of these axes with constant angular velocity omega, speed omega, and in the other 2 directions there is no motion, right? No rotational motion. So omega 2 is equal to omega 3 is equal to 0, right? Now let's perturb the system. Let's perturb the system for momentarily, right? So it's not like a continuous force acting on it or a continuous torque acting on it. We are just perturbing it. We are giving it a slight impulse, right? Such that it gets some omega 2 and 3. So its motion is slightly disturbed, so that now along the other 2 axes also it has some rotation, right? However, it's just a slight perturbation, right? So it's not that it starts rotating or persisting with a uniform velocity about the other 2 directions. It gets some rotation about them. However, the angular speed about, or the component or the rotation about these 2 axes is much weaker compared to the rotation about that initial principal axis 1, right? So omega 1, right? If that is the case, and now, so it's a small perturbation, so it's momentarily perturbation, momentarily it's perturbed, and then it's left alone to evolve, right? So now, let it evolve, and what we mean by that is then that means total tau is equal to 0, right? So momentarily there was a disturbance of the system, and after that again, so initially the system was torque free, momentarily we disturbed it, and now again the system is torque free, right? So after this, in a instantaneous perturbation, again the system is free to evolve without any external torque, right? So now what we can do is, now we can write down the evolution of the system in terms of, so we can see the state of system at any given time t in terms of these Euler's equations, right? Because we have anyway chosen the system to be rotating around this 1 to 3 principal axis. So now at an instant, let us say t, where t will be anything, right? We are not interested really in what is the actual number or how much time has elapsed after this perturbation. We just simply want to see how the system will evolve in general, right? So at an instant t now, we can write down the 3 Euler's equations along the 3 principal axis. Tau 1 is nothing but plus I3 minus I2 omega 2 omega 3. Tau 2 is I2 omega 2 dot plus I1 minus I3 omega 3 omega 1, and similarly the third component I2 minus I1 omega 1 omega 2, right? And now since we are saying that at the instant t there is no torque on the system, that means all these 3 components are equal to 0, right? So now what we have is, we have these 3 equations which govern the state of the system at any given instant t, and now we have to solve this to find some relationship, and so that we can actually see how the system is evolving, or what is actually happening to the system once we have applied a perturbation. Okay, so you can do that. Now what we can see here is, now if you look at these 3 equations, first of all we have said that the effect of perturbation is to give a very weak rotation about this other 2 axes, 2 and 3, and we define that in terms of omega 2 omega 3 being much less than omega 1. So that way, now in equation 1 we can see that this term is going to be very small, because it's basically quadratic in omega 2 omega 3. I mean, it's a squared term, omega 2 omega 3, if let's say they both have similar magnitudes. Of course I1, I2, I3 are different. They are different, however they will have the same order of magnitude, right? It's not that I3 is going to be let's say 100 times smaller than I1, right? For a general rigid body, these are different, however they will have the same kind of order of magnitude. So we can say that being omega 2 omega 3 being very close to 0 and much less than omega 1, this term is negligible, right? So basically then what do you mean this term negligible? And then we can write down for equation 1 from here, we'll get I1 omega 1 dot is equal to 0, right? Neglecting the second term, and this basically implies that omega 1 is constant, right? So the same condition which at t equal to 0 where we started our system with, so just before the perturbation, so we are approximating, because omega 2 and omega 3 are very small, we are approximating that effect of perturbation is not as much in changing this omega 1. So omega 1 remains constant, the system keeps on rotating with more or less the same omega 1 right now, right? So that is the first conclusion that we can get. So it's predominantly rotating about that principal axis 1. Now what about the equation of motion in this along the second and the third direction? So second and third equations. So what we can do is, let's solve for the second one. So second equation is I2, so second, I2 omega 2 dot plus I1 minus I3 omega 3 omega 1, this is equal to 0, right? So what we can do is, we can differentiate this. So differentiate once more, so we'll get I2 omega 2 double dot now plus I1 minus I3. This is a constant. And here, so if we do this, we will get d omega 3 over dt omega 1 plus d omega 1 over dt omega 3 is equal to 0. Right? So we are differentiating this equation number 2 once more with respect to time. And now here again we will use the result from equation 1 that omega 1 is constant. So d omega 1 over dt we took it as 0. Right? So that means this term will not be there. And instead of this d omega 3 over dt or omega 3 dot, we can replace the expression from equation number 3. Right? So putting omega 3 dot from equation number 3, what we'll get is I2 omega 2 double dot plus I1 minus I3, right? And from here, omega 3 dot will be, basically this term will go on the other side, divided by I3. So I1 minus I2, I1 minus I2, so that minus sign is included here. Omega 1, omega 2, and there is already omega 1 here. So omega 1 square, omega 2 divided by I3, and this is equal to 0. Right? So this is my equation of motion along the second principal axis. Right? And now we can see that omega 2 has an evolution with time, right? Because this is the equation, and I can write it down in a slightly more compact form. So I2 omega 2 double dot plus, let's take this entire thing as a constant, because omega 1 is constant and all the principal moment of inertia are constant. So as A omega 2 is equal to 0. And what is this? Well, this is a second order differential equation, and it represents different physical conditions depending on the value of A. Right? Okay. Similar thing we will get if we solve for equation 3. So we can start by differentiating equation number 3 and then putting back the value of omega 2 dot from here, and we will get more or less the the same expression here. So the equation of motion for third principal axis also will look something like this. I mean, in fact, I can write it down as omega 3, I3 omega 3 plus B omega 3 is equal to 0. So then this is my 2 and this is my 3. Right? So these are the now the equation of motions along these other directions, right? Obtained from Euler's equations. And now depending on the values of A and B, now we can see what kind of physical system they represent, right? Or what kind of evolution of the system that we consider they represent, right? So for example, there will be different cases. Let's take case 1. So in this case, so I'm just going to discuss this for second equation. The same thing holds for the third equation, right? So looking at the value of A, which is nothing but this, let us say that I1 is greater than I2 and I1 is greater than I3, right? So what that means is, for our system, this box, if this axis is taken as the principal axis 1, then the moment of inertia about this axis is maximum, and it's more than moment of inertia about the other two axes. So if I1 is greater than I2 and I1 is greater than I3, that means if the system initially is rotating about this axis like this, and then there is some perturbation which gives it omega 2, omega 3 in the other two directions. Let us see how the system will evolve. So of course omega 1 is constant, that is that's what we have assumed, right? So the system keeps on rotating about that principal axis. What about A? If this is the case, then A here, I1 greater than I3, I1 greater than I2, right? So A is then greater than 0. And if A is greater than 0, then my equation number 2 is equation of simple harmonic motion, right? I2 omega 2 double dot plus A omega 2 equal to 0 where A is positive. So the equation of a simple harmonic motion, that means omega 2 will oscillate, right, within certain bounds. Okay. Omega 2 will oscillate with this frequency and the maximum amplitude, minimum amplitude. However, it will not divert. So, and since omega 2 is very, very small, there will be an oscillation of omega 2. That means the frequency of or the speed of rotation about the second principal axis will change, but it will be within a bound, right? So, system will show perturbation, will keep on doing motion about that second and third axis, and this will also hold for the third axis, about the second and third axis. However, primary motion will still be along the axis number 1, right? The axis 1, that is I1. Right? Okay. Second case could be, let's say I1 is less than I2 and I1 is less than I3, right? So, for example, let us say if I consider this axis, right, then this is one of the axes along which the moment of inertia is smaller than about this axis and about this axis, right? So the third axis, where the moment of inertia is lower compared to other two axes. So if the motion, let's say the initial motion was about this axis, right, with the omega with frequency omega 1, then again it will be there, to remain there. That motion is not going to go anywhere, right? That's the initial condition. And looking at this equation, again we will have a condition A is greater than 0, and again what that means is simple harmonic motion. So again the frequencies omega 2 and omega 3 will have bounds, and they will show that perturbation in the system where the motion still is predominantly along the axis 1, right? Of course, now in this case my axis 1 is different, right, compared to the previous example. Okay. Third case is rather more interesting, right? Well, let's say I1 is greater than I2 and I1 is less than I3, right? Or there could be other way around. I1 is less than I2 and I1 is greater than I3, right? If this is the case, so when is that case? In case of our system, for my system, this axis, right? So about this axis, because the moment of inertia about this axis is less than about this axis and more than about this axis, right? So if that is the case, if the system is initially in that state, then value of A is less than 0, right? Because if I1 is less than I3, then this is negative, and if I1 is greater than I2, then this is positive. So the entire term A is actually negative, it's less than 0, right? That means now this is not a, so this will imply that 2 and 3, they are not equations of simple harmonic motion, right? Rather, they will have exponential solutions. Right? An exponential solution meaning omega 2 and omega 3 will divert with time. So after the initial perturbation, if this is the situation to begin with, after the initial perturbation, whatever is small rotation the perturbation caused along the second and third principal axis will keep amplifying and such such that this omega 2 omega 3 keep gaining in magnitude, and what that means is after that initial perturbation at any given time t, the motion is not going to be predominantly about this axis. So although still the motion about that principal, about that first axis to begin with will be with a constant angular velocity omega 1. However, the overall motion will have substantial contribution now from omega 2 and omega 3, because these, to begin with, these are negligible compared to omega 1, but now as time progresses, since it will have exponential solution, this will not remain negligible and they will gain in amplitude, and they can very clearly become as good as omega 1 or as large as omega 1. So the overall evolution of the system may look very different from the way system was prepared or the system was started. Okay. Okay. So this kind of analysis one can do for the simple harmonic motion. Do for the rotation of rigid bodies, and this is a nice demonstration which actually one can do at home. right? And it requires some bit of practice as well as a careful observation of the system. What one can see is, if you take this kind of a box, right, a cuboid box, such that you have three different moment of inertia. If you rotate it about this maximum moment of inertia axis, then it keeps rotating like this and leave it to fall on the ground. It keeps rotating like this, it will fall with this flat down. If this is my least moment of inertia axis, and if I rotate it about this axis and let it fall, it will again fall with this face going down. However, if I take this as if the dimension is such that this is the axis of intermediate moment of inertia, right, and I rotate it about this, what I'll see is it never falls down with this face going down. So for example, this way, it will tumble, because if this is now 1, then omega 2 and omega 3 are going to diverge with time. So as it falls down, the omega 2, omega 3 diverge with time, and when they diverge with time, that means the total angular velocity is not going to be remaining about this direction. It's going to point in some arbitrary direction depending on the values of omega 1, omega 2 and omega 3, right? So it will fall with some different, completely different orientation when it touches the ground, right? Another thing to note down while doing this experiment is, once we say that this box is falling down, it is actually torque free, right? Because free falling objects will not experience any torque even though they are falling under gravity, right? So that way it's the exact same situation which we have analyzed here.